Hey guys, welcome to this week's Midweek Motivation. My name is Jess. I'm one of the pastors at Westside, and I've got an awesome friend, Freyda, here. And we are going to jump into a conversation that just really adds on to our Sunday message, which was so good, by Pastor Gabe. Freyda is an old friend of Westside, and she's actually been a mentor of mine for years even. And in recent days, we've served in women's ministry together.
Welcome to the Midweek Motivation Podcast, where we bring practical help for your faith and life. Here's today's episode.
Freyda, thanks for being here. Can you share a little bit about yourself and what you've got going on right now?
Well, what I have going on right now is I'm a ministry partner at Cedar Mill Bible Church and I am a ministry partner for the Spanish-speaking congregation, Pastor Ruben. I've been doing this for some years now, so that's where I spend a lot of time.
Yeah, awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just moving forward with the kids and the marriage and everything else, and trying to catch up with friends.
Sweet. Yay. Well, thanks for being here and catching up with me. It's been a minute.
Yes, it has.
Well, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you join in this conversation is because I know your heart and your passion for growth, just personal growth and spiritual growth in your marriage, in life in general. And I think that one of the pinpoints that I wanted to lean into when it comes to the message that Gabe talks about on Sunday, which was catching fire and really just grabbing a hold of the identity that we have in Jesus and how that helps to move us forward. I wanted to talk with you about that, Freyda, just because I know about your passion for those things. And also, we've had a chance to dive into this story in John 4 of the woman at the well. And so we've dove into that together. So that's fun.
Yes, that definitely is a story that impacts, I think, that tells the story of when we encounter Jesus, we realize, what he means in our lives and what we can do.
Yeah, for sure. Before we jump into that piece of that, I thought it'd be awesome for us to be able to just share a little bit about our own testimonies. And so would you mind sharing a little bit about your story before you found Jesus? And specifically, one of the things that I think that we see in John 4 and one of the things that we see just every day today is the fact that we chase a lot of things that we think are going to fill us. They're going to satisfy a thirst or hunger or a need in our life, and just find that they are lacking. That's my story for sure. Would you be willing to share a little bit about yourself and your story?
Sure. Well, I have been a Christian now for 29 years. So it's been a minute of walking with him and realizing that at the time I came, I was 30 years old when I came to know Christ, and I was a single mother, 4 kids, and it was a struggle. It was very difficult. And I think that I found, because of the fears that I had of being a single mom and having 4 kids without really realizing, I think my biggest security blanket, if you want to call that, is trying to control life, trying to make sure that everything was where it was supposed to be and that everybody was where they were supposed to be, just making sure that things were going the way I thought would need to go in order for my children to be successful and for me to do right by them. And so when I actually became a Christian, I literally found out that it wasn't my life to control, and it wasn't my kids to control either. And that he with me all along, and he had actually been able to take me to where I needed to be. And he had a plan for me, which I didn't realize at the time. But when I did, it made a difference, because then I knew that I just needed to live my life the way he was asking me to live it, and trust the process in where he was going to take me. And so it was quite a change. Quite frankly, since I became a Christian at that age, I've never really walked away from him. I know some people have experienced that, and I am very close because I personally cannot see my life without him.
That's awesome. I can identify with the single mom side of your story, which but I actually I have that story that I walked away from Jesus. I actually met Jesus when I was 6 and had kind of a tumultuous childhood. And by the time I was about 13, I was just done and a little bit obstinate, obstinate teenager.
Okay.
And so I was like,
teenage years.
Yeah, we do personally, and we've raised teenagers. So
a double whammy.
No kidding, right? That gives you lots and lots of wisdom. But I walked away because I was like, this doesn't work. And by the time I was 19, I was like, it works a whole lot better than the way I do it. Led me to crazy depression. And I don't know, what do you think in your experience was the thing that you were chasing when you were chasing, like in the woman at the well, she was certain that there was this thing that would satisfy her, right? Like she came back to this well over and over again. But I think that we see in the story that it kind of tied metaphorically, I guess, to her life. There was a lot of other things that she was chasing to try and satisfy, whatever it was that she felt was lacking for herself. Can you identify that? Like, what do you think it was that you were chasing?
I think for me personally, I dove into my kids. My life was evolved around my kids. They were the definition of my success or my failure. So for me, it was just making sure that they were going in this path that I thought was the right path, when, we get to understand that a lot of our intentions are well meant. But unfortunately, as I went into the recovery world and worked on my steps and realized that my intentions were well, but when our heart is not with the Lord on the same page, when we're not listening to him and being guided by him, it's very easy for us to make the wrong decisions and actually dig deeper holes for us than actually get out of them. So I think when I became a Christian, I guess I didn't know what I didn't know. And so when I met him, I knew that he was my answer and I could actually let go of the fear and hold on to him and trust him that he would not only walk me, but walk my children through the path that he already had for us.
Wow. I think that's a really interesting thing to point out. And that thing being like, you want the best for your kids. Like you want the best you want to raise them up the best, you want to invest in them. So that in and of itself was not like the negative, right? It was not the whole digger, but it was the how.
It was just the wrong focus, right? I mean, when we focus our things on, they were my children, but God says that he is first.
Yeah.
And I was putting my kids first. They were my world. Everything set, the sun set and rose around them. And so they were the leverage of, again, my thermometer of success or failure. And so, again, relying on other humans to let you know or to kind of direct. And especially, like you said, the teenage years, it's very difficult. You're finding that you're working really hard. You're trying to figure it out. But our wisdom is not God's wisdom.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it's that light, that hope of knowing, I know I don't have all the answers, but you're going to guide me. You're going to show me. And if I hold on to you, I will get to the end of this road, the road that you have for me and that your word promises that is for the better, for the future, for something greater than what I could ever think of.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so
and, thank God, I get goosebumps. Sorry. Because, it has turned out to be that way. It has turned out for me that way.
Yeah. Sweet. Okay. Well, we'll get more into that. But I do want to ask you this. Was there a pivotal moment where you realized that wasn't enough and when your life really caught fire for Jesus? Can you unpack like that, what that looked like for you? How'd you meet Jesus? How'd that stuff change? Where you headed?
Yeah, somebody invited me. Well, Max, my husband, my now husband, invited me to church. My background had been a religious experience at a younger age. And at age 16, when I married, I decided that all I needed to know was that I was a good person and that I did good things, that I wasn't harming or hurting anyone. So, and that I recognized that there was a God, that there was a God, because all you have to do is look around, is what I always would say.
Sure.
But I'm done with the religion thing. I don't really need that. It's not something that's going to, benefit me at all. Because I experienced a lot of hypocrisy and a lot of things in the walk that I had at that time. So at 16, when I married, I actually also walked away from religion. And so it wasn't until the age of 30 that Max invited me to church. And I actually, as an adult, experienced what it was to go to church and what it was to be around people and that believed in God and that were following God. And so at that time, I'm grateful, because the reality is, the moment I experienced him, I've never really turned back, because it is very clear to me that there is no other better way, to live life than to live it under his covering and his protection and his guidance.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's key, right? Like we'll dive into the story more. I want to stay with the flow, but from my experience personally, I walked away from Jesus when I was 13, made a whole slew of terrible decisions that I thought would make me feel better. Like, my end goal was to connect with people of my age and be accepted. That was a measurement for me. It was to, my family was really like we had a very tumultuous home. And so it was to kind of try and bridge that and find some way to make myself feel safe and comfortable. And I grabbed a hold of like a temporary control type thing where I leaned into spiritualism. I leaned into, like, we did lots of spiritualist type things, crystals and all those types of things. And it gave me a false sense of control, made me feel really comfortable, like thinking that I knew what was coming, and also gave me a little bit of a boost of excitement in any given moment. And, but I ended up pregnant at 18, I ended up a mom at 18, I did graduate high school, but it was by the skin of my teeth. And I ended up in just the deepest well of depression. By the time I was, I'd say, 20, I had my daughter and just wrestled with really terrible depression. And for me, it was a kind of a moment of sitting on my couch and just being at the end of my rope and saying, I can't do this anymore. Like, I know I can't do it by myself. And Jesus, like in that moment, when I surrendered that to him and I confessed that to him, he lifted the depression is, like, for me, at least, it's a physical pain. And I carried it in my chest, and he lifted the physical pain from me almost immediately. And I'm careful to say that because I know that depression is a real thing and I've struggled with it since, but nothing like that. Like, it's never been that way before. And so I felt a serious sense of freedom when I finally surrendered the fact that I can't control that stuff and that I needed Jesus's help.
I think I kind of experienced that, that kind of same feeling actually when I started the 12 steps to celebrate recovery. I think that's where my next level, I think, of like dependence on God and really understanding why we do things, why we do the things that we do, because I knew that I was being controlling in my family and I knew that I was making everybody around me miserable. But in my head was like, well, I'm trying to do the right thing, guys. Just listen to what I have to say. And then starting the 12 steps and actually going through the steps and really realizing that that came from a place of fear and, the domestic violence that I had suffered with my kid's dad and the loss of control during that period of time. That there was a reason when I walked away from that relationship that I said, I'm never going to allow anybody to control my life except myself. Those statements that you do to yourself and you commit to them at whatever cost that is. So when I came to Celebrate Recovery, I realized why I was doing it, how it came about. And at that point, like you, I felt like I am not responsible for these kids' lives, right? I'm not responsible for the decisions at that time. They were teenagers, the decisions, that they're making and the directions that they're going. And so I think like you, I felt seriously by the end of that 12th step, I really did feel like I was lighter in my weight.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so crazy how you actually, the spiritual also weighs in, and there's a physical component to it when you feel like I can release this and I'm not responsible for that and I don't have to control that. And God has control over that. I can let it go and I can breathe freely. Yeah. So I totally understand what you said when you feel that weight lifted. And then I think and you realize the power and the grace that God has on our lives and that he actually he has the ability to take over and can do it for us. Yeah. And we don't have to try and do it on our own strength and on our own way and I think that that's kind of what you were alluding to is that we're all trying to do it on our own and we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to outsmart ourselves and trying to see which
and everything else. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. We're trying to find the answers on our own, when the answer really is right there in front of us. But, in due time, God does take us there. If we're seeking him, he will give us that, light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. Yeah. What is it that I don't know where it is in scripture, but Jesus tells us to yoke ourselves to him. And there's a reason why, because he actually is the one that can carry the load, the burden, and we are not strong enough or equipped for that, right? So that's why we yoke ourselves to Jesus, for sure.
Yes.
Okay, well, on Sunday, Pastor Gabe talked about 2 barriers that will keep us from letting go, will keep us from moving into this place, right? And one of them is ignorance and one of them is arrogance. So what thoughts do you have on that idea?
Oh my gosh, I definitely had both of those at one point in time. I mean, I think having come like you from a tumultuous family and feeling like I'm the middle child. So you kind of feel like, well, they like her better because she's the oldest and they like him better because he's the youngest and he's the boy or whatever that is. And you feel like you're insignificant and you're not seen. And so somewhere down the line, as you're growing up, you believe that you're the only one who's going to be watching for yourself. And so you are the only one who's going to have the answers to being able to survive this game of life, right? And so
you're the only one that can make the change, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If I need to find the answer so that I can make the change or I can adjust to whatever, And so I definitely at one point was ignorant in the sense of at one point I didn't know the Lord. Another's is when I did get to know him, I really didn't know him. It takes time. It's a process to really trust and understand his greatness, So I think that our arrogance, as we get to know him more, we realize that we really don't know anything and that we really need to depend on him and realize. And I think that's, as you said, I think it's part of all of our process of understanding what are the fleshy things that we're carrying around and that we're trying to figure out versus what God wants us, that transformation that God wants from us.
Yeah. Oh, that's good stuff. I think for me, like it was that piece that I'm going to change. Like after I came back to Jesus, it was that it's my responsibility to change the whole trajectory of everything. Like as a kid, one of the things that I said often was that I wanted to make sure that my kids weren't raised in the same home environment in many ways that I was. And so I found myself after getting to know Jesus and moving through my faith journey a little bit more that I got a little bit arrogant in that process. So it's true that arrogance can keep you from seeing that you need Jesus. But honestly, it can also keep you from transforming after you do know Jesus if you're not real careful.
Absolutely. Totally agree. I think it's a battle we're always going to have, right? Where,
Agreed.
The word says, be careful if you think you're standing firm, because we do have to really, it's God says in his word that it is a journey and it will not end until he comes. So we're always have to be aware and alert of where we're at. And where our thinking is and what is it centered in.
Yeah. So what is your process? How do you keep an eye on that? How do you let those things go?
Well, I think for me it's, usually in the tension, usually in the hard times, something, what are you trying to teach me when we're struggling of not finding an answer, not feeling like we have a clear direction? And I think that that's human of us because we want comfort, right? And so we want to know that we're going in the right direction. And then we're looking from God a certain confirmation and to feel free of like peace and whatever. And in my walk with him, I've come to learn that he's not seeking for us to be comfortable. And because he is a loving and caring father and he wants the transformation for us, he is not going to facilitate that comfort. So it's in those times of discomfort that God is trying to show me something that I haven't been able to understand or to see, and that I need to just keep plugging, moving forward and finding that strength in him, to know that, that conviction again, that I know who I believed in and I know that he is my answer. So I just need to keep going. Just help me, one day at a time, just help me get up tomorrow and figure it out tomorrow and keep on plugging away until I find that way that you have for me.
Yeah. That's so incredible that is the process that we go through when we first meet Jesus, but it doesn't ever stop. It's kind of like an onion peeling back those layers, which I know sounds a little cliche, but it's true, right? Have you gotten to the point where you recognize it when it's coming?
Oh my gosh. I don't, no. I know. I right when you think, and I'm speaking from experience right now, right when you think things are going well for you in life and that everything is comfortable and you're saying, "Oh, thank you, Jesus," or whatever, something happens. And you're like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that one. It blindsides you. But I think also, again, because we're creatures of comfort, when we find that we're comfortable, and we've been stretched enough, I think God in his grace sends something else because like you said, it's that next step we need to take, that next level of transformation that we need to make. Yeah. That he is allowing us, giving us that opportunity to make, to take that step of faith and to walk through, that dark valley at times.
Yeah. Good stuff.
So, how about you?
I've recognized a rhythm, and I am like I've been built into someone who looks for constant growth, and it might be a little bit of an addiction where I'm just like, okay, I feel settled now, like I'm looking for the next thing. And so in my rhythms, I kind of look for the next thing. I think I've got a process where I evaluate my year, and then right around August, and maybe that's my birthday, so maybe that triggers something, but right around that point in time, I start to evaluate the year and what God's been doing and where he's taking me. And in the last quarter of the year, I asked God for a word, for a focus for the next year. And it's crazy how when you're intentional about engaging with God and transformation and getting closer to him and hopefully closer to who it is that he wants me to be in my uniqueness, that he, if you ask him for it, he will oblige. And so about halfway through the year, every year, I'm like, that's what you meant by that word. That's the thing that you wanted to teach me, and that's where you wanted me to grow this year. So I've set it up so that it's in rhythm, but it doesn't always come that way, right? And sometimes in every year, there's like big steps that I have to work through in order to get to that place that he wanted me to get. But it's become a little bit more predictable. And for me, my frame of mind around it has shifted. And it's shifted from, I feel a stressor and I feel pain and I feel a struggle coming, to even just in my body, I changed that feeling to mean something amazing is coming. It's going to be hard, but it's like a good cardio workout or a good lifting session. It might suck for a minute.
Yes.
But at the end, it's going to be good pain. It's going to feel good and make me stronger. So I've developed intentionality around it, but you're right. Sometimes it just sideswipes you and you're like, what were you trying to teach me in that, Lord? Okay, that sucked, but I appreciate the lesson.
I got it. So I don't have to go around again. I got it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, well, if you don't mind, I'd love to jump into the story of the Samaritan woman. Yeah? Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so like I said, we've done some deep dives into this story a couple of times, I think, just in women's ministry. So for me, it really holds a special place. I can identify with this woman so well. And so whenever I hear about her, I'm like, oh. And then every time I dive into the story, I learn something new, which has been the case this time, and I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
But for you, what are some things that stand out to you about this interaction between this woman and Jesus?
I think what always just amazes me is God's compassion and mercy for those of us who are lost. Like you said, looking and trying to fill ourselves in with things that the world offers, right? That there's so many options. But the fact that he actually took the time to speak to her against all cultural norms.
Yeah.
That even his disciples were shocked, when they saw him talking to her. They're like, okay, what are you doing?
Yeah. So for anybody who isn't familiar with the story, culturally, the Samaritans, in relation to the Jews who Jesus was, were outcast. They were rejected, right? They were rejected as unclean or unholy. And really, in that culture, probably wasn't really appropriate for Jesus to engage with this woman just in general. But she wasn't always just a woman. She also was a Samaritan woman.
Right.
So yeah, it took a lot of what a human being would consider overcoming stereotypes, overcoming stigma from peers, perhaps, for him to engage with her, but he did.
Yes, he did. And he wasn't afraid of what people would say or think, or, he and obviously he had the intentionality of doing that, because usually Jews would go around Samaria, they would not go through, and he went through. Yeah.
I think that to me, it stands out that Jesus engaged with this woman in a way that she could relate. You know what I mean? Like he asked her just for a drink of water. That's what she was there for. She was there to get a drink of water. So he connected with her exactly where she was. And it wasn't until she engaged back with him that their really deep conversation. It lifted off. So cool. So I'd love to unpack a little bit more about the Samaritan woman and where she was. We learn a little bit through the story as we read, and Jesus kind of reveals some things about the Samaritan woman that tell us why she is where she is. Can you unpack that a little bit? What did you take away from that?
Wow. Well, I think it wouldn't be any different than any of us when we encounter him. We come with a background. We come with decisions that we've made that we're not proud of, regrets, that we have, and a lot of pain, a lot of hurt from people we didn't expect, people that really don't. In her case, there was judgment, and that there was ostracizing, and so I know personally I have felt, some of that experience. So I can totally relate to her encounter of just, being able to be maybe wondering, why are you here and why are you talking to me, and why you feel comfortable doing that, where probably she had never experienced that before, So to me, it's just a reflection of God's willingness to, in spite of us, he's there and he's willing to have a conversation with us. He's willing to walk with us if we so do, want to seek him.
Yeah. In spite of ourselves, for sure. I get a little bit of a sense that she was skeptical of his engagement with her to begin with. She was like expecting that he was going to judge her, and expecting, like, why are you asking me for a drink of water?
What is that meaning behind that drink of water that you're asking?
Yeah. And I can relate to the shame from my perspective, because I carried a lot of shame after I came back to Jesus. And it took me years to work through and let go of that stuff. And it wasn't even, I had an expectation that I was going to be ostracized for the decisions that I made, and I never was really, from the the people that I connected with, but I carried shame for my decisions because I chose to walk away and then ended up in just a terrible state for myself. So I can connect to where she is. Like you said, I'm sure most people can.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, when we're seeking something when we come to his feet, so we're seeking something because we're empty, we're hurt. Maybe we feel abandoned. There's no hope. So I can totally relate to her and where she probably was at in her life of just dealing with, this is what it's going to be for me for the rest of the life. This is all I have.
Yeah. So in the story, she has this conversation with Jesus and they talk through a couple of different things. And it's an interesting conversation to follow. From my perspective, to get a full understanding of it, I kind of had to dive in a little bit more to understand culturally their conversation. And that was really helpful. But she finally gets to this point where she recognizes who Jesus is. And in light of that realization and the promise that he made, that he says, I'm going to read the scripture. Let me find it real quick because it's a big promise. Mm-hmm. He says in John 4:10, it says, Jesus replied, if you only knew the gift God has for you and who you are speaking to, you would ask me and I would give you living water. And they're here at this well and they've come to get a drink of water, so physical sustenance, but he's pulling her into something that's completely different, right? And so I guess the question that I have, let me get back to my notes here, is she recognized the promise and she realized who she was talking to, and then she dropped her bucket and she ran, right? And she was excited and she wanted to tell everybody. Why do you think she dropped the bucket?
Oh my gosh. Like I dropped the bucket, right? It's like you realize that there is no other place or no other person, no other thing that's going to give you what he is offering you.
Yeah.
And what he's offering you, his word promises that he wants the best for us. We're loved. He was willing to die for us. And therefore what he wants is the best for us. And I think that that's very difficult for us to accept at times. But when we do realize it, like for me personally, like I said before, I've been blessed in the sense of from the moment that I met him and I accepted Christ and I got baptized, I've not turned around. I haven't even glanced back because there's there is no reason. For me, he is the answer. He is the answer. And she knew it. And I think that hit her so hard that she understood and obviously wanted to go and share it with everybody else, which is really
what she was there for.
Yeah, she's like, this is nothing, kind of like what we hear with Paul, right? When he comes and he's like, all this that I valued that he thought was really so important, he considered it trash for the love and the work of Christ, right? So I think that as we get to know him and understand him and believe the promises that he has for us, we realize that really this world has nothing to offer us and he has everything for us. Everything that we could ever need, he is the answer.
Yeah.
And I think I've said that several times.
No, I'm an amen, sister. What would you say to somebody who's like, maybe where you were at some point in time and you were like, but this is my job. I've got to, my kids should be everything. And truthfully, being a responsible parent who owns that process is valuable, important. Maybe you're someone who is running a business and you're like, this is valuable and it is important because the people that work for me matter and the cause that I'm serving is valuable. You know what I mean? Those are things, those are buckets that we pick up to try and draw water from this well. What would you say to somebody to answer that question of value versus fulfillment? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah. Well, nothing belongs to me. I've come to realize nothing is mine. It's his. I'm his creation. They're his children that he let me, raise. And so I think that I came to realize that nothing belongs to me. He is Lord. He is sovereign in his wisdom and understanding of us as humans and the ways and the things that we choose to go that aren't good for us. But if we just if it's a process, that is for sure. You're not going, I believe that it's 29 years in the working where I stand now, right?
Yeah.
So in my earlier years, it is a struggle, and the struggle really is to believe and to trust.
Mm-hmm.
And those of us that have been hurt and those of us that have been lacking, let's say, we're looking for those things of saying, now that I'm an adult, I want to go ahead and fulfill those things that were lacking and that were empty and what have you. And those are the buckets that we're carrying.
Yeah.
But in reality, the only one that we need to carry, because he will be the provider, he will be the protector. The only bucket that we need to carry is his. Because he will cover all bases. He will provide for us. He will protect us. He will guide us. He will give us the success that we need to have. He will give us exactly everything that we need to be in this world, knowing that we'll be okay.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we will be okay.
Yeah. I hear you saying too, that there's a difference between drawing from the expectations that we're pressured to meet in the world versus drawing from the expectations that God calls us to meet. And that is it's two different wells, if we're going to stick with the same metaphor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is that she drops her bucket. From what I see when I read the scripture, she drops her bucket because it's the tool that she needs to use to draw from this well that is earthly water that's going to satisfy this, when Jesus is saying, no, you need to draw from this well, which is going to satisfy you, and it never runs dry, right?
Absolutely.
So if we're drawing from that well, even those things, because they are important, those things like raising your family and putting in effort, all of that stuff is valuable and necessary. But in order for us to put the right kind of behavior, heart, intention, spirit, whatever you want to call it, that you feel like you've got to add to that, you've got to draw from the well that Jesus provides versus the well that, Yeah.
Well, it's again, we need to fill our cup with him.
Yeah.
We need to, if he is guiding us, if he is first, that means he's the one we go to ask for direction, to ask for wisdom, to ask in the decisions that we need to make. He's the one that's guiding our lives, and he will be the one to teach us how to raise our children. Mm-hmm. He will be the one to teach us how to love our husbands. He will be, if we go to him, he will answer. He says, you'll knock at the door and I will answer. So I think that when we realize that the well that we need to draw from is the one that's going to have what we need, not necessarily in the expectation. Because, for a while when I became a Christian, for whatever reason, I don't know, up to this day, I don't even know what they could have said or how they presented it to me, that you think I'm going to become a Christian and then everything is going to be gone and everything is going to be good.
Right. No.
You know what I mean? I don't know how that happened. It happened. And it took me a long time to realize that's not true. It is, in fact, he actually asked us to carry our cross. And, because
says that we're going to suffer.
Because the reality is we're in this world and we also need to transform, which means we need to let go of the old man, of the old habits and the old things to grab onto his,
Yeah, so wise. Thank you. Well, so we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but since your experience of catching fire, is there anything that you'd add that has changed in your life from that moment until now? Well,
I can say that since I became a Christian, I've actually serving has been a priority in our lives. Max and my life evolves around serving. We're constantly serving because we have come to realize that in the serving is where we encounter the reminders of where we might have been at one point, and we can be of encouragement and of support to those around us, kind of giving back again, giving back what we've been given. We want them to know what we know and to experience what we've experienced, because there is a difference. It makes a difference in your life and I think that just being in community, serving, the things that God asks us to do, it has a purpose, and it brings meaning into your life to surround yourself with those that are following like you, and we could encourage and support each other. So I would just say for me, my life has evolved around that. Even when I was a single mom, I would drag my 4 kids in with me to church to help me serve. They were helping me in the children's ministry and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they grew up serving too. So I think that that's the best avenue that we could take in walking this journey and sharing it with others.
Yeah. Yeah. That component of sharing for sure, but you can't do it unless you're engaging with people. So yeah. I for sure have been the recipient of your encouragement so many times. So thank you for engaging.
Oh, well, I learned some tidbits here and there from you too. So, it's been wonderful to just actually see you, and your growth. I am just so proud, and I'm so amazed of how far you've come and where you're at. That's why what can I say? It's just, you're the evidence of God's work in your life. And I'm sure you're a great testimony to those that are around you and have seen the change just like I have.
Oh, thank you. I didn't pay her to say that.
No, and it comes from my heart. I love you so much for it, because it's wonderful to see God's hands molding your future and everything who you are today. It's amazing from when I remember just meeting you. Shy, very shy.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody believes me when I say that.
Yes, I know. I can say this. Yes, she was very shy.
Thanks, Freyda. Well, again, I appreciate you too. I think that you are such a wise woman, and I appreciate the fact that that you serve, and that you as we were prepping for this, you're like, I've got no thing that's off topic. You're such your willingness to engage with people and share your testimony so that other people don't feel alone is incredible. So thank you for being here. It's one of the reasons why I thought that this conversation would be so awesome to have with you. But last question, if you were talking to somebody right now who was still carrying their bucket, what advice would you have for them? How would you encourage them to move on to the next thing?
I think I've said it a million times in this video recording, but God is the answer. Keep seeking, keep asking, and He will answer. It's not going to be in our time, but it's going to be in His time. But the time will come where your heart will feel that shift and that difference in your life, His hand in yours, and you won't have any other answer, but He's working in you. And so I just encourage, just keep on keeping on. It will come through for you. If it's a tough time right now, if it's difficult, keep your eyes on the prize, and that's Jesus, and
all the way.
Yes, Jesus all the way. Wow, Jesus.
That's awesome.
Well, just it's life is difficult and it brings unexpected things. But, if we're holding on to Jesus, it is guaranteed that He will walk with us and He will walk us through.
Make us strong. Yep.
Yes.
He is our strength. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, my friend. I appreciate your time and your wisdom. And till next time, guys.
All right. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Midweek Motivation. To make sure you don't miss any content in the future, please subscribe, share, and if you enjoyed this, give us a like, and consider popping by a Westside service some weekend. You can find out more at westsidecommunitychurch.com.